All right, something a little bit different and not necessarily new because a year or so ago, I thought I would start going through my retro gaming mags and kind of just flipping through them. And I did that with Nintendo Power #1, but I didn't provide any commentary. I just sort of flipped through the pages. I did a long series of videos on my prior channel with both, I think, actually it was primarily Electronic Gaming Monthly, and those were pretty popular. So figured I'd maybe kind of start that up again for those few subscribers to my channel that like retro gaming. So here's issue #1 of Nintendo Power Magazine. I have 2 copies here. One's more of a beater than the other, and I have the Zelda map somewhere. That's all equally bad shape. And then here's my better copy, which probably behoove me to get graded. It's in really nice condition, except for this crease here on the front cover. So I don't know enough about comic grading or CGC grading to know like what this means for a minimum grade or at best grade because of that crease on the cover, like maybe 6.5, 6, I don't know. But anyway, we're going to go through issue #1 from July, August of 1988. And you start out with a phone number that I called a lot back in the day, pre-internet. And unless you had a copy of Nintendo Power and you had a game, you needed help. Either you sat there and you figured it out on your own, or you called these guys. And they definitely came in handy back when you used to pay long distance charges, per minute back in the late 80s. And so this particular issue here is going to highlight Super Mario 2, which was brand new at the time. And I like this game, but not as much as the other ones because it kind of deviated from the traditional Mario type platformer. You probably know what I mean. I mean, Super Mario Brothers 3, probably the best in the series from the NES days, and then Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo was maybe even better. Here we go with essentially breaking down characters and enemies, a lot of cartoony artwork. Nintendo Power ran for something like 255 issues, whatever it ran. And I got nearly all of them, except there was one year where I just didn't renew my subscription. And I think it was a year where Pokemon was like really big, back in the late 90s. And I might have gone back since and got a few to fill in that gap, try to work on a complete run of Nintendo Power. But anyway, this sort of goes through and breaks down the stages, obviously, here. And, back then, I think they just had to take a bunch of pictures of a TV screen and string everything together to make these sort of visual maps of the levels, the layouts, and how things kind of look, in the big picture here. Zelda, Second Quest. I think I finished that part of it. Still a great game. Still holds up to this day, in my opinion. Legend of Zelda, the original. In fact, The Legend of Zelda might be my favorite Nintendo franchise. It took me only about 4 or 5 years to work my way through the Breath of the Wild on the Wii U. I think that's what I have. The Wii U. And well over 100 hours into the game, and I've basically completed 60% of it. So it's just insane how much that goes into games these days. Rbi Baseball. Classic, love this game. With the cartoony characters, just love it. I used to love playing the All-Star team. In fact, that's what this is, McGuire. It's like Seitzer, Mahler, Franco. Remember George Bell was a monster in this one. Mark McGuire. Here's Bases Loaded. That was cool with that perspective that they sort of were first with for Nintendo baseball games. And then I remember buying this game here, Major League Baseball. And it was awful. And I brought it home, and it, because I bought it because they didn't have RBI Baseball. So it looked similar enough, and I bought it. It was terrible. And I actually brought it back and returned it back when you could return video games. I just made up some excuse like, oh, yeah, I thought it was something else. And, oh, yeah, I will take it back. And, of course, they probably changed that policy real quick to avoid, because what do you do with a returned game, back then? I guess they just ate it. So anyway, here, continuing on, we got more screenshots of the baseball game. RBI, Bases Loaded. I guess you could bean somebody in Bases Loaded and start a fight on the mound. It's kind of crazy. Counselor's Corner. Never played the original Metroid. I played Zero Mission on the Game Boy Advance, which was a reimagining of this with updated graphics, I think additional levels and a map and a save feature. Whereas the OG Metroid was like you had to sit down and you had to park your ass in front of the TV, I think, until you played it all the way through. Or maybe it was there was a password. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. There might have been a password, but still, it was no maps, no nothing. You basically had to figure things out on your own, draw your own maps, or take advantage of the game counselor hotline. Castlevania. Never played that original. I did play part 2 and finished it. Here is Ikari Warriors. That was a fun game. Mike Tyson's Punch Out. I beat Mike Tyson. I remember I was so nervous, fighting him, because basically it was a one-punch knockout at some point when you were facing off against Tyson, and your twitch reaction had to be quick, in order to dodge the punches. And it took a while for me to finally beat him. It was like this huge accomplishment to beat Mike Tyson on the Nintendo. And this little comic strip here sort of gave away a hint for a particular game that was popular at the time. If you read through this, it would kind of talk about a game and a trouble spot for said game and kind of give you a little hint. Classified information was always fun to look at, to see what kind of codes or tricks you could do with these games. Love this ice hockey. I used to always pick the 3 fat guys and the 1 skinny guy. And the sole purpose of the 1 skinny guy was to hold the puck and zoom around the ice rink while I was waiting for time to run out when I had a lead. So it's kind of a dick move on my part back then. But that was my strategy. The 3 big heavy set guys and the 1 skinny guy because he was fast. Contra, everybody knows Contra. Gunsmoke, that was kind of like a Commando sort of knockoff. Some codes for Punch Out here. This is always funny because it looked like the guy was getting head in the corner of the ring when this animation popped up. It was kind of bizarre. Double Dragon, one of my favorite franchises. Love the NES version. Played this thing over and over and over again. Didn't have 2-player mode, but I didn't really care. Just a classic game. And then Double Dragon 2 was just as good, if not better. Double Dragon 3, not so much. And then recently I downloaded, and by recently I mean like a few months ago, I finally downloaded Double Dragon 4, which came out like 4 or 5 years ago at this point, and essentially is it's part 4, but done in the style of Double Dragon 2 graphics, animation, that sort of thing. So I'm kind of disappointed in that. I kind of wish if they made a 4th or a new installment of Double Dragon, it would go back to the original arcade style graphics. The best version of Double Dragon, I think, for any home game system is for the Game Boy Advance. Double Dragon Advance is an excellent translation with extra stages, and probably my favorite version of the Double Dragon franchise. Here's Contra. Very easy game once you knew the famous code. Some game show stuff here. Legendary Wings. I remember this, I think, has the distinction of being the very first game I ever rented from a video store, when renting video games was like a new thing. And then people that did that came under fire because Nintendo didn't like the fact people could rent games before they bought them. And I remember there were some lawsuits going around about that. But honestly, it did the public a service because, you would typically buy a game based on box art or maybe pictures in magazines. And at least you had the chance to try something out, So probably did eat into sales of bad games is probably what happened there. Iron Tank was cool. This is I think this part of the magazine just sort of like went through upcoming games. Pack Watch. A lot of classics in here. This guy, I think it's Howard Lincoln. I think he went on to do. He was with Nintendo for a long time, and then he left the company. I forgot what he ended up doing. And sort of a celebrity profile here with celebs that played Nintendo games, I suppose. The mailbox, people could write in letters, achievers, high scores, etc. Video spotlight, which was kind of lame, but. And then the top 30, and here were the top 30 NES games back in 1988, not surprisingly. Zelda, Punch-Out, Metroid, Super Mario. Kid Icarus was a fun game. That was a game that, did this also, I don't know if this had a password. It might have had a password, but that was also a very long game. RC Pro-Am was really fun. Ice hockey, Rad Racer, Double Dribble. Round off the top 10. And that was it. That was the first issue of Nintendo Power Magazine. And if I do indeed decide to continue this, which I think I will, up next will be issue number 2 with Castlevania and a controversial cover. Thanks for watching.